up, family? How you doing today on this Saturday? It's your girl, Dr. Shonna, and I am so ready to have this conversation. I already see some impatient people in the chat. I still love y'all. I still love y'all. I still love y'all. Impatient as ever. However, I'm here. So hello to everyone. We're going to talk about some really important things, but I do have some announcements to make and some updates for you guys. Before I even get started, let me go ahead and give a fat shout out to Joyce. Joyce is one of our community members who spotted me in a Walmart in New Jersey. Oh, there you go. You should be able to hear me now. Okay. So thank you so much, y'all, for letting me know my mic was off. But I want to give a fat shout out to Joyce, who saw me in a Walmart in New Jersey. I want to say a big shout out to you, Joyce. Thank you so much for your love and your support. I really do appreciate that. And as Joyce, if she's on or if she comes on later, as she will be able to tell you that I am the same in person as I am on camera. So Joyce got a big hug for me because I really do love and appreciate every last one of you guys. I also want you to know that I am aware of the changes in the law regarding Roe versus Wade and how that will have some impact on some people, right? And I know you guys want me to talk about that. I already got a couple of emails about that, but I want to be able to say to you all that I will eventually talk about it. But if you have been with me in this community for a while, then you should really know how I operate. There is a lot of things that need to be unpacked first before I go ahead and jump on it. I'm just not one of those people that just jump on everything and just talk about everything. And there's no shade to anyone who does. However, I just think that it's important for us to not only be informed about what the changes are, but for us to plan and what that should look like for us as a community. So I have to really be able to understand the Roe versus Wade situation from multiple angles before I am comfortable speaking about it. But rest assured, family, I will speak about it. Okay, I definitely will. Family, do me a favor while we're starting to get ready. Go ahead and share this video. Y'all know I've been on my good behavior. I haven't cussed out too many members that come in, not members, because I love my members. I don't mess with my members. But I haven't cussed out too many of you trolls that come in here want to say stupid stuff. I've been on really good behavior. I have to give myself a pat on the back. So go ahead and share the video to make sure everyone of all ages can be able to listen in, because what's happening in New York State will happen in other states that have had strict gun laws. And you guys really need to know what's going on. All right, so go ahead and share the video. If you are on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up. If you are on Facebook, give the video a thumbs up, a heart, a like, whatever you want to do. And most importantly, share the video with your community. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you are watching this video on Facebook, make sure you go ahead and follow the page. Just don't like the page, follow the page. Shout out to my frat brother out there. Hotep to you, bro. I love and appreciate you every day, all day. Listen. Oh, one more thing before we get started. To all my customers who have been on my site, save helping couples reconnect. Your orders have been received in terms of your pheromone, perfume, and your massage oil candles, and your orders will be processed today and shipped to you. So thank you all for visiting my site, helpingcouplesreconnect.com. Thank you all for your purchases, and I will get your orders out to you ASAP. Now let's go ahead and get started. I don't want to waste any more time. So if any of you guys are familiar with New York State gun laws, California gun laws, and I believe there's 6 other states that follow very similar gun laws when it comes to who can get a permit for a gun and the process that someone has to go through in order to get a permit. In New York State, I can talk about New York because I'm from New York, and I can talk about New Jersey because I live in New Jersey. But in New York State, it has always been mission impossible to get a gun license, a gun permit, right? It's always been very strict and hard for some people to get gun licenses and or permits in New York State. And y'all already know how things go, right? Because people like to look at the laws, they like to interpret the laws, and they like to challenge the laws to change the laws. And that's exactly what has been happening in New York. And I want y'all to know as a community why this really matters, okay? First of all, it's important for you to know that in New York State, it has been over 100 years that they have had this law that says that people could not carry concealed guns. And when they wanted to apply for a gun permit or license, they had to prove why they needed a gun. It had to relate to their risk of harm as it relates to their profession and other things that go along with that. And not everybody in New York State has been permitted with the ability to conceal their guns and carry the guns outside of their house or houses, I should say. Typically in New York State, when people get gun permits and gun licenses, they get it on a basis of being able to to be able to have a gun in their house. But they challenged that law and they said that it violated the Second Amendment. Why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about this? Let's make this very clear. We already know that on this channel, we're talking about critical thinking in our community. We already know on this channel, when laws start being changed, we have to always ask critical questions, crucial questions, and we have to prepare ourselves. For over 100 years, the state has required people to prove why they needed a gun. For over 100 years, they have left the decision to who gets a gun and who doesn't get a gun to law enforcement. And now that's no more. See, it was one thing for New Yorkers to be able to protect themselves by having a gun inside of their house. It's a total different ball game once that extends outside of your house. My question is, and I'm not saying that it's wrong, I'm not saying that it's right. I want you guys to really just start to think about things. My question is, the people who have been fighting, and that is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated. They brought the case to the Supreme Court versus Bruen. So that's the case. Is New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. Now, Bruen is Kevin P. Bruen, and at the time, he was the superintendent of New York State Police because the law was left to the police to interpret. And they basically are saying that this law violates the Second Amendment to the citizens' right to carry. Now, it doesn't mean that even though this law has been overturned, it doesn't mean that the gun application process is going to be different. It's still going to be the same process, but they just cannot limit it to your household. It can now extend outside of your household. But I want you to know the reason why this is important is because this law is going to trickle down into other states. Not only California, but the 6 other states. And the reason why I say California, because New York and California have been very proud states on their gun laws and how strict their gun laws are. Somebody's asking me, is the volume low on your end? The volume is not low on my end, but is the volume low on everybody else's end? So let's go ahead and pause for just a second so people can do a volume check. How is the volume on your end, y'all? Tell me how the volume is. All right, let me know, y'all. Tell me how the volume is because Highly Favor is asking about the volume. Need y'all checking. Somebody says, I can hear her clear. Okay, so if Harry can hear me, then the volume must be not good on your end. So we have to either turn up your speakers or you can log out and come back in, but everyone is saying loud and clear. All right. So let's go on. I want you to know that you always have to ask yourself, who are the people challenging these laws? Now, I want to make it very clear for those who have been with me for a long time. Y'all know I am not opposed to guns. Now, I know that's kind of shocking for some people to see my face and the color of my face and me to say I'm not opposed to guns. I know that's kind of shocking for some people. I also know it's kind of shocking for people to know that I am a doctor, social work, and I am here for the people. And I believe in social justice and advocacy for the people. I know that most social workers, not this one, most social workers are far left leaning liberals and they go for everything in the world for the people, right? And I understand that. But we're all not the same. We are all not the same. So I want to make that very clear. I am not saying that this is a bad law. I'm just asking certain questions because when laws are passed, I always want to know, well, who, when it comes to guns, who are they hoping to protect themselves from? Now, some people would say that's stupid. Why would you ask that question? Why would you ask who are these gun owners looking to protect themselves from? There is obviously they're protecting themselves from thugs. They're protecting themselves from criminals. They're protecting themselves from violent people. Is that it? Who are these thugs? Who are these criminals? Who are these violent people that the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association is protecting themselves from? Who? Right? So I'm that kind of person that says, okay, well, I understand we're doing this and this is good, but what's propelling this? Why now? This is a law that has been on the books for 100 years or over 100 years. Why now are they challenging the 1911 Sullivan Act? Why now? Now, I want y'all to know what I just said, the 1911 Sullivan Act. Y'all can look it up for yourself. Because basically, the 1911 Sullivan Act has stated that possession of a handgun is a crime without a permit. And concealed carry, you can have concealed carry at the discretion of local law enforcement. We're talking about 100 years ago. 100 years ago, local law enforcement in New York State decided who can carry a gun and who could not carry a gun. We're talking about 1922, 100 years ago. Everything has to be placed into perspective. So in the 1920s, law enforcement agencies determined who can carry a gun and who cannot have one. And until recently, that act, the 1911 Sullivan Act, was challenged by Robert Nash and Brandon Koch. Looks like Koch, Koch. Challenged that law. So when I heard it, I said, well, what would my people think? Because I know how a lot of my people are, right? So we've been saying this for a lot of years now since, what's that movie that came out, right? What's that movie that came out that they once a year you get to kill whoever you want to kill? And I know it's a movie. I just follow the bouncing ball. I know it's a movie, and I know that my community, particularly my community, I can only talk about my community, we're always going back to that. We're always wondering what else is going to come. We always talk, thank you, T. James. T. James says The Purge. That is the movie. And they keep making 101 different parts of this movie. But it's always about at midnight, the bell strikes and people come out and they start killing everyone to purge America and all this other stuff, right? And so I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm definitely not saying it. But it's always been a very interesting perspective for many of us, because many of them, what we say, don't be surprised if they put it in a movie. Don't be surprised if it comes into perspective. So now all of a sudden they're talking about these gun laws, right? Trying to stop the gun laws in New York State. They're saying, listen, there's a lot of thugs out here. There's a lot of criminals out here. We should be able to protect ourselves outside of a home. We already know in some other states how that has gone down in many communities for people who are able to carry outside of their homes, and they feel like they need to protect themselves against the criminal and the thugs. I don't know, unless you are actually in an act of violence, how would you know somebody is a criminal or a thug, right? But they have to protect themselves from that. And we already know so many situations have gone down in different states where certain people get popped, right? They get clipped. Certain people, they don't come back. They don't wake up. They don't walk out the hospital. And we have noticed that it's typically a certain kind of people. Now, why does that happen? So let's talk about gun violence. Let's talk about some real key points in gun violence. And I want to be able to give this credit to Neek. Neek is one of my research assistants. I got another one that came on board, and I'm going to be interviewing a male, right? So I'm going to come on and talk to him to see if he wants to be a research assistant so we can have a diversity of topics. But nonetheless, Neek went and she helped me pull some research, because I know that things happen often when they're motivated by fear, right? We already know that. A lot of us already know that things happen when it's motivated by fear. Now, I'm not saying being able to carry outside your house is motivated by fear, because let me say something. I'm gonna be honest to y'all. If New Jersey, let me change that. When New Jersey, the state that I reside in, when New Jersey changes it and allows us to leave the house with the gun, don't be surprised if I got a gun on me, because y'all already know how I feel. I'm for my community, but some of y'all crazy. I'm just trying to say. I'm not trying to be funny, and I'm not going by the propaganda. I'm just going by my own experience. Some of y'all crazy, right? And some of y'all be doing some real slick shit, right? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Let's just be honest for a second. So I wouldn't be opposed to a degree with the law changing. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm just telling you the truth, because shit is getting crazy all over. It is absolutely getting crazy, and I don't feel any safer today. I just don't, and I don't know about you all, but I just don't. People are doing really nutty things. We're not safe in supermarkets. We're not safe in churches. We're not safe in some of our own neighborhoods. I'm just being outright honest with you guys. I live outside of a community that's dominated by my people. So I don't live in a community that's dominated by my people, and I don't trust them either. So I'm just telling you the God honest truth. And y'all already know how I feel. Y'all already know how I'm feel. We fighting it from many angles. We fighting our own people. We fighting everybody else. We fighting it from all angles. All angles. So for me, protection is serious for me, right? Protections are serious. People act crazy no matter where you go. In New Jersey, there has been malls that have been shot up recently. Do we even talk about that? In Jersey, there has been shootings in places that we would not have ordinarily thought that a shooting would go down, but it has gone down. And a lot of us out here in New Jersey, a lot of us out here in New York, we sit in ducks when we leave our house. We just hope nothing goes on. We just hope nothing goes down. Let's just be honest. I just want to be able to put that out there. But I am going to address some things that propaganda does promote that isn't necessarily the truth, or it isn't the only truth. But I wanted to put that out there that I'm not in a box. I don't just see things from one angle. I don't just turn around and say, this is all BS and it's just propaganda and we're not the ones with guns. We all have guns. Everybody has guns. Everybody has guns. Blacks have guns. Whites have guns. Asians have guns. Hispanics have guns. Everybody has guns. But I will say this, when it comes to legal gun ownership, less of us, those who identify as ADOS, those who identify as African descent, those of us who identify as blacks, less of us have guns. It's just a known fact. All right. We're now getting better, right? We're getting better at getting guns, but we're the ones that's typically in situations like that are sitting ducks. Let's just talk about it, right? But let's really talk about what's really going on here. Because when New York State steps in to change a law that was on the books for 100 years, not challenged, everyone knew that in New York State, if you can get a gun permit, you can get it to protect your home. In New Jersey, you can get it to protect your home. You just cannot carry it on your person outside of your home. We already know now when New York State, a state like New York, when they go ahead and they change, the Supreme Court overturns that, and they now say is a violation of the Second Amendment rights, in which, based on how the law is interpreted, it is a violation, right? When they now say you cannot do that, and they make it so that you can now carry a concealed gun, what does that mean, people? Now, you already know. That people have discrimination set inside of them. People have biases set inside of them. You already know that propaganda has painted a picture of who the thug is. Propaganda has painted a picture on who the criminal is. Propaganda has painted a picture on who the violent persons are. So when I ask the question, they're changing these laws because the streets are getting crazy in New York, so they say, who are they protecting themselves from? We already know that mass shootings, according to the research, mass shootings account for less than 4% of gun homicides in a typical year. In a typical year, mass shootings account for less than 4% of gun homicides. Most gun violence in the U.S., it comes in a different form. So when you see propaganda highlighting gun violence, they're typically talking about a small portion of the population. They're typically talking about disproportionate poor Black and brown people when it comes to gun violence, because gun violence is concentrated in poor areas. We already know that. It's concentrated in poor areas which are marked by disinvestment. People who are leaving the areas, businesses that are leaving the areas, good law-abiding citizens who have left the area, educated people who have left the area, people who are career-oriented, career-centered have left the area, resources have left the area, economics, money has left the area. So in neighborhoods where disinvestment exists, that means the homes that are in disrepair. We're talking about boarded up buildings in certain areas, like in Chicago. We're talking about very few stores of quality. We're talking about very few resources for the people there, for the children there. We're talking about when people say, I really don't want to bring my business into that community, that is what is called a disinvestment. And where there is a disinvestment, there tends to be high rates of poverty. And we know that poverty leads to violence, which leads to disinvestment, which leads to more poverty and more violence. So when I hear people in New York State say they want to be able to carry their guns outside, I have to scratch my head and I have to ask, who's going to get you? Who's going to get you? Who are you protecting yourself from? These are just questions I ask. This is not an emotional question, because I know how some people are. They get so emotional and they want to start attacking in the comment section. I'm just asking a question. And these are questions that we have to ask because they require us to answer them. Who are the people they're trying to protect themselves from in New York? We know that Black males ages 15 to 34 years old is 2% of the U.S. population. 2%. That's a very small number. 2% Black males ages 15 to 34. However, they are roughly 37% of firearm homicide victims. So, who are the people at most risk of harm when it comes to gun violence? Black females are also disproportionately impacted by gun violence. Black females are nearly 4 times more likely to be victims of gun violence than white females. So, who's most at risk of harm when it comes to gun violence? So, when I hear certain people talk about needing to carry guns outside of the home, I always ask myself, who are you protecting yourself from? Because if I carry a gun outside the home, it's because the community I live in, some jokers want to act crazy in the community I live in, and they don't look like me, so they need to get popped if they bring violence, right, to me and danger. And you already know some jokers, we see it on camera every day. We see it on camera. You don't live, if you're not the typical face in certain communities, we already see it on camera every day. Jokers want to pop off and do stupid things, right? And then you can't fight back, because if you fight back, you're afraid you're going to go to jail. That's what they think. I'm going to harass you. I'm going to threaten you. I'm going to get in your face yelling, screaming. You're not going to do anything about it because I'm good with the good old boys. And if you do anything, you going to jail. And I'm going to be right and you're going to be wrong. Am I making this stuff up? We see it all the time. We see it all the time. We see things go. Do y'all remember that video? Y'all remember that video that came out of Jersey and everyone was shocked that it was this county in New Jersey, that one guy that went viral, and then they started protesting outside his home and he got arrested. Remember, he was in that guy's face. He spit in his face. He was talking all joke. The cameras was rolling. He was saying, you ain't going to do nothing. Who you going to talk to? The cops are all in my pocket. He was on camera talking all this shit about what was not going to happen to him. He said, go ahead and get your boys and roll up. Ain't nothing going to happen. He was very proud that he knew all the police officers in his town. Very proud. And he said, roll up to his place. About 100 of us rolled up, right? About 100 of us rolled up and the cameras were rolling. And he eventually got arrested because the community put the pressure on him. Y'all remember that? Silk Team 46 says, I remember that. Remember that? Put the pressure on him. But I'm saying you got to really look at that situation. Why was that guy so comfortable? Why was that guy so comfortable approaching that brother, threatening him, calling him racial slurs, monkeys, the N-word? He was out of his mind. First of all, the brother was too cool for me, because he would have got his jaw tapped, right? I was like, babe, tap his jaw. Like, it would have been done. But that's a whole nother story. But the point is, he was so comfortable disrespecting this brother. I wonder if that brother had a concealed weapon on, not a concealed shit. I mean, you know what I mean. I wonder if that brother, even if it was concealed, if it was clear that that brother had a gun on him, I wonder if the same scenario would have went down the same way. That's right. Somebody said it was in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. That's right. I wonder if it would have went down the same way. See, I just want us as a community to start really changing the way we think, because we hear the changing in gun laws and we get so afraid. But we don't realize that these kind of situations happen like this all the time. And typically law-abiding, good citizens of melanin are unprotected. Let's just be honest. I know y'all don't like to hear this. I know some of y'all. I'm not going to say all of y'all. I know some of y'all don't like to hear this. Let's just be honest. We are unprotected. And many of us run into situations all the time where they make it very known that we are not welcome in their communities. They make it very known that you are different and you're not welcome here. I'm just wonder if that law existed in New Jersey, in Mount Laurel, where that happened, right? I wonder if there was a You had a right to protect yourself outside of your house. And people were very much aware that we were educated around guns and we carry guns and we are ready to protect ourselves and stand our ground when we have these kind of racial acts that come against us. I wonder how that would look. I'm just asking a question. How would that look? Right? I'm not saying it's going to look good. I'm not saying it will look bad. I don't know. I'm asking, how would that look? Would people be so willing to run up on us and do all types of crazy shit to us? We see crazy stuff happen to us all the time. I just wonder what that would look like. You see, because when certain people fight for certain laws to be changed, like the New York State law that's now being changed, it's sort of like a public announcement, sort of, like, in my opinion. It's like a public announcement. It's like saying, now that we can carry, you better think twice about trying any of us, you thugs, you criminals, you violent people. You better think about trying any of us, because even if you flinch and I feel threatened, I'm going to put a bullet in you. It's sort of like a public announcement that they're saying it, because you see, I don't think when people fight these laws, and I'm not saying that this is the case, I'm just thinking out loud, people. Just play along with me for a moment. I'm thinking out loud. I don't think the people that go against the Supreme Court to overchange some of these laws, I don't think they're doing it with certain people in mind. Now, I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Our community like to hear it, right? I know a lot of people outside of our community don't like to hear this, but I don't think they're going to change those laws saying we all should be entitled to carry. I don't think that they're doing it with us in mind. Because when you really look at the research and you really look at the data, less of us are armed than they are. The people who advocate for these laws, the people that advocate for gun laws, the people that advocate to change laws that have been on the books that's in violation of the Second Amendment. I don't think they're going out there to change these laws with us in mind, because history doesn't support that. Right, people? Right, family? History doesn't support that. So for me, it's sort of like a silent public announcement to let you know, now that it's different, you better think twice about stepping to us. But I think that's the message that we all should be entitled to say. I think that's a message that we all should be entitled to say. I think it's a lesson for many of us who like to pop off and do things and use our hands to put on people. Like, because some of us are happy with our hands. Let's just be honest. Some of us are happy with our hands, and we want to put our hands on people. We want to threaten people. We want to follow people. We want to demonstrate a lot of anger and aggression. Some of us are like that. Let's just be honest. Some of us are like that. I just wonder if any of us are ready to start changing our tune. Especially those of you guys in New York City, where this gun law has now been overturned. See, I wonder if you're teaching your youth or your young adults that stop popping off on people, because you never know what people have, and people might take you down exactly where you stand. Are we having these conversations? I know I have my conversations like that with my teenage son, because he's 18. And I already know that when it comes to the male species, their hormones create a lot of aggression in them, right? And so a lot of male species, typically speaking, is from the ages of 15, 16 to about 30. Typically speaking, they're hot-headed, right? They're hot-headed. And some of them do violent things because their aggression and how their brain is, the hormones in their body. I know that happens. So I know I happen to tell my own child, when you leave this house, you need to think before you approach them. Some people want to say some crazy shit to you. And you need to think about getting away from them before you automatically respond. Respond if you have to respond, right? But you need to think about the fact that you don't know what that person has. And unless you have to stand your ground and fight, unless you have to do it, try to move away from jokers. The jokers out here are crazy. Now that this law is in existence, I think that's a conversation that we even need to have with ourselves and our community, because a certain people are going for these kind of laws, and you always have to ask yourself why. We already know that propaganda has done a really good job at conditioning our minds into believing who the threat is, where the threat lies. Because the research says conditions that increase the likelihood of community violence exist where there's easy access to guns by people who are elevated for risk of violence. And the people who are elevated for risk of violence are typically people who have income inequality. That's a nice way of saying poor people. I'm just trying to be honest with y'all, right? Income inequality. People who live in concentrated areas of poverty, according to the research, are more likely to be violent or have violent communities, live in violent communities. People who live in underfunded public housing. We already know that the public housing, in my world, we call it projects. I don't know what they call it in other areas. They like to call it housing authority. They like to have like fancy names like housing authority. In my communities, the projects is the hood, it's the PJs. That's where it's at, right? But people who live in underfunded public housing, underfunded projects, the hood, the PJs, is rich with violence and crime and murder, rape, child abuse, child sexual abuse, you name it, is rich in those communities. So when I think about the people that say we need protection, who do you need protection from? Because it's not like you jokers are in the projects. It's not like y'all walking around the projects and y'all got to be safe from the criminals and the thugs in the projects. Are you expecting the people who are law-abiding citizens in the projects? Because believe it or not, the projects does have law-abiding, hardworking citizens. I know the people that's going to the Supreme Court to change this law, I know they're not thinking about the people who are law-abiding in the projects getting guns. I know they're not. I mean, they have a right to get a gun because they are law-abiding citizens. So the Second Amendment protects them too. But I know they're not creating the changes in these laws with those people in mind, even though those people are the ones that are at increased risks of violence, gun violence, homicide, crimes, rapes. They're the ones who are at increased risk of harm, because we know that there's a lot of communities, especially in Chicago, where the clear line is visible to us all. You see the communities that have money, where there's resources, where there's police presence, where there's community police presence, where there's clean streets, where there's after school programs, when there's summer programs, when there's stores that are flourishing and not closing down, where there's houses that sell at market price and above market price. We already know that those communities always exist in urban areas, but they're controlled differently, right? They're controlled differently. So they have less crime, less gun violence. In Chicago, there are areas that are highly concentrated with crime and gun violence. That's why I love my research assistant, Neat. She pulls out all the information. She helps me to see it, because it's things that I just know from being in this field for a long time. But when you start to see those numbers and you start to see the areas that the gun violence directly impacting, you can read about it. You can read research study after research study and article after article and news reports after news reports. You know all the areas that have gun violence. So the people who want to carry the guns on their person, even though they are entitled to by law, according to the Constitution, even though those people want to carry the guns on their person, who are they really protecting themselves from? Because they're not in the hood. If you really want to talk about gun violence, those laws that we can now carry, they'll be a great thing for those of us in the hood that are law abiding. We have to live with these derelicts every day. Some people get up and go to work and they come home and they're tired, and the only thing they want to do is get to their children, cook, lie down and watch TV, and they can't even make it to their apartment door without being accosted in the hallways, without being raped in the hallway, without being robbed at gunpoint, and they have nothing on them to protect. So if you want to talk about changing the laws to give people the right to carry outside of their homes, we need to make sure that we educate our community on being able to do that, because we are the ones that are at risk at harm. The research makes that very clear, that we are the ones at risk of harm, not white people living in their fluffy areas. That's what the research says. The research says people that live in communities with under-resourced public services are the ones that are at most risk of harm when it comes to gun violence. The research says that people who live in community that has underperforming schools and high dropout rates or low rates of college students going to college, they are the ones that are more susceptible to gun violence and crime. That's what the research says. The research says people who are living in communities that lack an opportunity, you know, to advance, or as they would say, to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, they're the ones who are impacted by gun violence. They're the ones that have to protect themselves because they're at the most risk of harm. That's what the research says. The research says where there's a lack of opportunity and perceptions of hopelessness. See, that's a nice way of saying depression in my world. When you have an overwhelming feeling of hopelessness, like it's not going to get better. This is just what life is for you. It's not going to get better. See, the research says when you live in those kind of conditions, you're more susceptible to violence, gun violence, crime. That's what the research says. So who do they need protection from? Do they really need protection from? Us? We know that according to the research, and I can drop these links. I got to remember to put these links in there for y'all. But we know that according to the research, and I got this off of Reuters. Y'all know Reuters, Reuters.com. It's titled U.S. Gun Deaths Surged in 2020. Right. This article is from it's written in May 2022, but they noticed that in 2020 guns deaths surge. And that article in Reuters actually said that African Americans as a whole, not some African Americans, not just poor African Americans, it says African Americans as a whole were at least 4 times more likely to be killed by a gun than the overall population. Let me say that again. African Americans as a whole, not just poor African Americans, not just undereducated or uneducated African Americans, not just African Americans that live in the hood, the PJs, the projects, whatever the case is, not African Americans that came from schools that were failing, not African Americans that are on welfare, not African Americans that live in public housing. It says African American as a whole were 4 times more likely to be killed by a gun than the overall population, and 12 times more likely than a white person. Four times more likely than compared to the overall population, and 12 times more likely than a white person. So who are they protecting themselves from? We got to be careful how propaganda is used to convince us that the people you need protecting from are the people who are dark skinned people, because the dark skinned people are the criminals. This is what they say. They will tell you that the dark skinned people living in places like Maryland, Michigan, and Illinois, they are the ones with the highest rates of death from gun violence because they are violent and they are killing each other. This is what the propaganda will tell you, and that is a myth. Because if you really look and you run the numbers, you will learn that the places with the highest rates of death when it comes to gun violence is found in Mississippi, Louisiana, Wyoming, Missouri, and Alabama. That's what it says. The places that have the weaker gun laws have the higher rates of death. So when they're protecting themselves or they want to be able to carry outside their homes, I wonder, is it actually for protection? Voodoo glitch, you right. You right. I don't know if people just heard what I said, but let me just highlight Voodoo Glitch. He says, we finance that propaganda though, right? I don't know if we finance it. I get what you're saying. I don't know if we finance it though. He said, we vote for that same propaganda. I would say that. I think we vote for that same propaganda. I would definitely say that, right? Absolutely. But let me say that the question is, let me repeat the question because I want y'all to look at something else. The question on the table is it for protection, even though they're less likely to get shot or killed? We are more likely to be shot and killed. So is it, and I'm not saying we are more likely to get shot and killed by them per se. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is when it comes to gun violence, period, the research shows you that we are more likely to get shot and killed. So when they say that they are going to be protecting themselves, the question that I have is, are they really protecting themselves or is it for another reason? I'm not saying it's for another reason per se. I'm asking a question. I'm asking a question. Because propaganda does a great job highlighting the melanated community and saying that this is the community that we have to protect ourselves from. And every person that they put on the news when it comes to gun violence typically has a black face attached to it. But they don't even highlight the conditions in other poor communities. They don't highlight the gun violence in other poor communities. They don't highlight the gun violence in other communities that are not highly populated by Black people. They don't highlight the homicide rates in these other communities. They don't even talk about how do we get guns into our communities. We'll talk about it in a second. Put a pin in that because I'm almost over with my show. So we'll put a pin in that. But have you guys considered Asians for a second? Now, before I go ahead with this, I'm just going to give you the research. But before I go ahead with the research I'm about to give you guys, and I'm going to close out of here. Listen, for the people that are not in part of the community, we know we always get visitors all the time. They like to report my video and say dumb stuff. This is not a video on Asian hate. So don't come at me with no nonsense. I'm just stating the facts. I'm just stating the research. You can Google it for yourself and find out. And if I remember to drop the links, I will drop the links for you. But I wanted to really put that out there because when you say things about certain populations of people, and it goes against contrary belief, then you're being discriminatory, you're being a bigot, you're being racist. Like this world has become so sensitive. They only like the narratives that they like to be told, and anything that goes against the narrative is laden with hate, discrimination, and other things that are in need of being censored. So I want to make that very, very clear. I was doing some research and some digging, and I came across Toronto Star 2018 article, Toronto Star, and that's in Canada. In Canada, they were doing a big crackdown on Asian gangs and guns in Canada. And so they came up with a couple of gangs. Let me tell you some gangs in Canada. Perhaps you guys heard about them, but I'm pretty sure you guys have not heard about them because, the the mass media or the mainstream media does a great job at highlighting the faces of those they want to connect to gun violence, those that they want to connect to gangs, homicides, illegal activities, drug trafficking. They want to connect certain faces. But I'm gonna give y'all some information. Y'all can go ahead and Google it. It's out of Toronto Star 2018 article, which stated that there were some gangs. One is called Asian Assassins. Another one is Project Originals, followed by Chin Pak and Sick Thugs. See, these gangs were being watched by law enforcement in Canada, and they eventually, a lot of the members were arrested. And they were arrested for drugs, cocaine, and heroin, right? And after I read about this, I said, this is very interesting because they don't really talk about the Asian violence. They don't talk about the Asian gangs. They don't talk about the Asians dealing in cocaine. They don't talk about the Asians dealing in heroin. They don't talk about the Asians being caught with guns that have stripped serial numbers. They don't talk about the Asians experiencing that. They usually say it's us, the Black people. Then I came across another article from Associated Press in 2020. And that article talked about an FBI, yes, I said the FBI task force. And that task force was particularly focusing on Asian crime and Asian gangs. Then I came across another article that talked about another task force in San Jose. And I found this in a 2016 article in Mercury News, who was focusing on a task force to bring down Asian gangs. But I found the FBI's report in the Associated Press from 2020 most interesting because there seems to be a whole bunch of Asian gang violence in California. You have the Black Dragons, you have Hua Ching, and Asian Boys. And these gangs, according to the FBI, are made up of Vietnamese people, Chinese people, and Korean people. And the FBI is so interested in them because they're dangerous. They're dangerous. And according to the FBI, they have a lot of illegal dealings with marijuana growing operations, methamphetamine, cocaine, crack cocaine, and firearms. So here it is. I was uncovering so many articles that you don't see in mainstream media from Toronto, Canada, or I should just say Canada, period, as well as United States, with the high concentration in California. But if you let them tell it, the violent people are the Black people. So I got interested. And I started to dig even more. And I came across information in an article in the Washington Post. Now, I guess the Washington Post we would consider is a trusted source to some people, right? And the Washington Post had an article in 1996 about a Chinese executive who was arrested for smuggling firearms into the U.S. because I asked my research assistant a question. I said, I understand that a lot of our communities experience a lot of gun violence. And the question is, who are we getting the guns from? And I wanted her to unpack that. I said, Neek, where are the guns coming from? Because if we're going to have this conversation, we need to be able to have a transparent, honest conversation. Where are the guns coming from? So when you Google that and you're doing cursory research on a surface level, because you know who controls what you Google, right? You already know how to control what kind of information will pop up. They will tell us that the guns are coming from people who live in states like New York, New Jersey, and other states where it's kind of hard to get a firearm. they will tell you that they're going up and down the iron pipeline. And y'all know what the iron pipeline is, or just in case you don't know what the iron pipeline is, I like to educate my community, right? So the iron pipeline is along I-95, Interstate 95. It goes all the way up and down the East Coast. And so basically what they're saying is people are going to different areas down I-95 to purchase guns legally, and then they bring them back across state lines into the states that make it hard for you to get guns, and then they sell them illegally. They would say that that's where the guns were coming from. Now, is this happening? Yeah, this is happening, but they don't really tell you the story of gun runners, right? That's beyond the United States. They don't really tell you that story. You got to dig for that information. This is an article from 1996 where that Chinese executive was arrested for smuggling firearms into the U.S. And these guns were particularly being smuggled into the United States to be used to deal or to sell to street gangs. And you know they're going to sell these guns to street gangs all over the place because they don't care who they're giving it to. They want their money. But if we let the government tell the tale, the way the guns are getting on the streets in areas like New York, in areas like New Jersey, and other areas that have tough gun laws, right? The way they get it on the streets, if you let the government tell the tale, it's happening all through illegal trafficking up and down the iron pipeline. That's how it's happening. And so when they say that, they're focusing on reforming legal gun dealers because they're saying that the people who have the shops in places like Alabama, in places like Georgia, in places like Texas, the people that have the shops there, we need those kind of gun dealer reforms to make it harder. But they don't really talk about the jokers who are bringing guns into our country. So I kept digging. And I said, no, this is deeper. This is deeper. This goes way deeper than just going up and down I-95. And I kept digging. And then I asked another question. I said, who are the importers of guns into the United States? The importers, where there's an in certificate sale, like you have to have that legal certificate to say the gun was sold legally, right? So I said, who are the importers? And those who are importers, are they coming from countries who are known for criminal activities? And then what do you know? I came up with the top 10 countries importing guns into the United States. Because if you let them tell it, we, the brown people and the black people, whatever that means, right? The people with the melanin in their skin, we are the ones with the problem when it comes to guns. We are the ones flooding the streets with the guns. We are the ones that need to be controlled and put into jail. But when I looked at the top 10 countries importing guns into the US, now they may be importing it on some levels legally, but we already know. As long as there's a deal that can come into the United States, there's always going to be something illegal behind it from the same people. We already know it. Number one, the number one country with the most imported guns into the US is Turkey. And I'm getting this off of United States Custom Border Patrol site, cbp.gov, 2021. cbp.gov from 2021. Top 10 countries, Turkey, followed by Austria, then Brazil, Croatia, Sweden, Italy, Germany, Czech Republic, Canada, and China. Do y'all hear what I'm saying here? So then I went and I said, you know what? Let me just focus on Turkey for a second because Turkey is number one. Why are they number one? You do know about the Turkish mafia, right? And how serious that mafia was. And now they're back in the spotlight. You do know that Turkey ain't no joke. I hope y'all do know that Turkey is no joke. I even got a little bit more creative when I started to focus on Turkey. And I said, wait. Turkey Turkey, there was an article from PBS or some type of special from PBS regarding Turkey when they was talking about Sarkis. He was an arms merchant, right? And even though he was a legal arms merchant, he was the U.S. allowed him to do these sales. The U.S. gave him carte blanche to operate arms dealing, just as long as he was transparent and telling the U.S. who he's selling guns to, and he was allowed to sell guns to communities or to countries who had a vested interest into America. Now, if you know anything about Turkey or what's those other places on the list, I named a number of them. Germany was somebody on the list. Croatia was another one on the list. We have these countries. Austria was another one on the list. Czech Republic. Listen, all of these jokers got criminals, and every criminal is out there to get a fast dollar, and everybody want to be connected to the black market, and if they can get away with it without being arrested and doing time, they're going to do it. Yes, 17. Canada was another one on the list, importing guns into the U.S. Canada was another. Let me tell you something. Anytime there's a channel to get guns, and we already know we're always going to find somebody to abuse the system. You want to know how we getting guns on our street? You want to know who the guns are coming from? The guns ain't coming from people that look like us. That's what they're telling you. That's what they are telling you. So it takes me back to the question again. Are they really passing these laws because people really want to be out in New York, New Jersey, California? Are they really wanting to be out in the world because they are afraid and these people really are trying to protect themselves? Or is it another reason? We already know. We already know how they move them guns. The only thing they have to do is bring them guns into the U.S. legally, and then we know it's sold illegally. We know it's sold on the streets. We already know that. We already know they stripped the serial number. Did I tell you about the one? I didn't finish telling you about the Chinese. I think it was the Chinese Armzilla. No, it wasn't a Chinese Armzilla. It was somebody else. Who was the other person? Let me go back to my notes because I forgot about that other country. Give me a second. Let me go back to my notes to see if I can find it. So in 2021, a year ago, U.S. Customs seized 240 convertible blank guns from Turkey. From Turkey. Listen to what I'm saying. They got the ends to selling guns legally, imported them legally, but they also are doing illegal things. I don't make this stuff up. The U.S. Custom Border Patrol seized 240 convertible blank guns from Turkey that was destined to Bucks County, Pennsylvania. That's what it says on their site, on the U.S. Custom Border site. Do you know what that means? So they seized a whole bunch of different guns, but some guns were considered legal, so they let that go through. And then the ones that were the convertible blank guns. Those are the guns where they're not fully built as a gun, but you can easily convert them into a gun just that fast. Like there's no serial numbers on them or anything like that. They got caught through aircraft, not smuggling in no truck, hiding under no avocados or corn like you see in the movies, not smuggling in a Dunkin' Donuts truck where it's hidden by donuts. No, on an aircraft that was flown into the United States, and customs happened to check it, and the 240 guns that were considered convertible blank guns were seized. And they were going to Bucks County. Yes, somebody said that's right outside Philly. Come on, we better talk about it. Y'all better know your geography. Right outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was going to Bucks County, PA. And those guns, once you get there, you can make them and build them to some guns. Don't put no serial numbers on them. And you can sell it to the drug dealers. You can sell it to the gangs. You can sell it to the people that rob people and steal and all this other good stuff. You gotta always follow the trail. You gotta always follow the trail. It takes energy to do that. It takes patience to do that. It takes time, because when you know what you know, they can't tell you anything, because the government is always going to tell you the tale they want you to know. So they overturning these laws. People are out there, they're ready to carry. Again, I get your point, but the research doesn't support your reasoning for wanting to carry openly in New York State. Now, I'm not against it. I'm not saying I'm fully against it. Y'all just say, just family, as a community, y'all just have to know what's happening. And I think y'all have to start moving a little bit more strategically, because I know nobody wants to be disrespected. I know nobody wants us to step, but you got to understand that some people are going to start provoking your asses. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Some people are going to start provoking some of y'all. And some of us, I always tell y'all, control your emotions. Control your emotions, because some of us are going to pop off. And when you live in certain states that has stricter gun laws, the assumption is always, he ain't going to do nothing to me, right? He ain't going to do nothing to me. She ain't going to do nothing. What the fuck she going to do? I wish she would. You know how we are. We always talking about, I wish he would. I wish a ninja would. You know how we are. We always think we the baddest thing on the block. I wish they would say something to me. What you going to do? I'll tell you what they going to do, but what you going to do? I'm going to tell you what they're going to do. Oh, they happy this law is passed, baby. What you going to do? What you going to do is shut your damn mouth if you ain't got nothing on you. What you going to do is just keep on walking. That's what you're going to do. You're going to keep your emotions under control. You're going to think twice, because they're not playing. And some of y'all are behind the 8 ball. They're not playing. You're going to think you feeling kind of froggy. You're going to leap and you're going to be shot down. Got to start thinking. This stuff is not happening by accident. I'm going to be telling you more detail about Roe versus Wade and why that matters when it comes to constitutional law. See, y'all got to really understand what is happening here. This is not a game. And like I said, I'm not saying that they shouldn't pass it. Oh no, they shouldn't do it. Oh Lord, geez. I'm saying that some of y'all that live in high crime areas that are law-abiding citizens, and you just trying your best to protect yourself and your family, some of y'all should be happy that this is passed. Some of y'all should be happy. But we're so conditioned and trained not to be happy about these kind of things. Because we're conditioned and trained that, oh no, guns kill people. No, people kill people. People kill people. And if they didn't have guns, listen. If they didn't have guns, don't think your ass would be safe too. Because some of y'all walk around unarmed anyway, right? Some people got hammers. Some people will bash you right in your head. Some people skilled with blunt objects. You do some research on some of those Asian gangs where they don't have guns. They will take your ass out with a blunt object, beat your head right into the ground, and some of y'all still unprepared. I'm just trying to say, if you really want to talk about protecting yourself, and you really want to look at all the research and who's most susceptible to gun violence, who's most susceptible to meeting someone on the street and ended up dead. If you really want to do the research, it's usually us. If you really want to do the research, if you really want to see who's really at risk of harm, it's really us. So you got to ask yourself, why are they changing that? What's really going on here? Y'all do what y'all want to do. It don't matter to me. I'm giving y'all the information. What's up, Neek? Shout out to my researcher. What's up, Neek? Let's go ahead and highlight her. Not only she a researcher here, she's also a member of the channel. What's up, Neek? Neek, you did your job with this data. I just hooked it up with some other areas, but you made it easier for me to go ahead and find all those answers I was looking for. You get what I'm saying? Thank you so much, Nick. We appreciate that. We have somebody else coming on too. You know, she's about to get started too. So this is dope. This is dope. But I want y'all to know this is real serious. This is real serious. And if you walking around here thinking, oh, that's just ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want no gun. Guns just scare me. They just scare me. I understand. I understand. I understand, Gans, the guns are scary. I understand that. But what's going to be scary is when your ass is caught out there. We don't need another Trayvon Martin situation, with all due respect. We don't need another situation like that. Because these jokers are going to love walking around smiling, signing Skittles because they beat the law and they ain't have to go to jail. Don't be the person crying at the casket, because it's not a game. It's not a joke. Don't be the person crying at the casket because you thought this was a game. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm advocating the right to protect yourself. I'm not advocating for y'all to go there, boom, if you don't. No one is telling you to do all of that. I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating for you to stand your ground. I'm not advocating for you to be showing off and being all emotional to my y'all popping, ninja. I'm not telling y'all to do that. I'm telling y'all to be prepared. That's all I'm telling y'all to do. You do what you want to do with the information. I'm informing you. I'm informing you of what's happening here. And if you're not asking the right questions, go ahead and keep being entertained by the Purge. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 44. Go ahead and keep being entertained by the Purge if you want to. Some of y'all really need to be at your computer doing your application online and getting approved. Get approved. You can decide if you want to arm yourself or not, but at least get approved. So if you have to arm yourself, you're already ready. That's all I'm just trying. Do whatever you want to do. But the Second Amendment applies to all citizens, not just white citizens. It applies to all citizens. Just saying. Do what you want to do. Right? So listen, family. I love every last one of y'all, for real. I do. I don't want to get you guys all amped up to go do stupid things. What I'm saying to you is we got to be smart and critical with the way we're moving, because this world is changing, and it's changing rapidly, and it's changing overnight. And there are a lot of people who are not ready for the change. And you know, when change comes like this, that means that we also have to sit our children down and have conversations with them. Because let's just be honest, I'm going to say this and I'm out. I'm not going to keep y'all much longer. Let me just say this and I'm going. Let's just be honest. Let's just be honest. Some of our children be out here acting a fool. And we know that, you know, they're young. They're young, you know, and some of our children think they're invincible and they think they can say whatever they want to say. And some of our children, I ain't gonna tell you what they need. You know what they need. But some of our children be out here reckless, doing reckless things. You need to talk to all those children, because this is not a game. You see, people out here, when it comes to the good old law-abiding citizens, they're not afraid of people who look like they got some sense and they got themselves together. And, you know, you look like, oh, Lord, hi, good morning, how you doing? Their heart typically doesn't skip a beat with certain type of people. But then there are people that they make a lot of assumptions on. That, oh, that must be a thug, that must be a criminal. Oh, she must be loud and rowdy. Oh my God, you know how these teenagers are. Hold your purse and lock your door. Oh Lord. You know, they start getting nervous around certain people. And when you're nervous and you acting out on fear, there's gonna be people losing their lives left and right because they're acting out on fear and they're afraid and they just assume that he had a gun because he had jeans pulled down to his butt and his underwears was showing and he was singing out loud rap music, and I thought he was crazy because I didn't see the AirPods in his ears and he's singing along with the disgusting songs that some of our children listen to, and I got nervous and he asked me for the time, and they ain't gonna say he asked me for the time, but we know that's a story. He's gonna say what time it is. They thought they said something that was like run your wallet and they got nervous and they popped them. You gotta start having conversations with your children because there's gonna be a lot of excuses for why some of our babies are dead. And even if your baby was an innocent one, even if your child was a good child that didn't do anything, in the eyes of the media, your child is guilty. Your child is a criminal. Your child had a weapon. Even though they ain't gonna find no weapon on your child, we already know how the narrative goes. They're not gonna find a weapon on your child, but your child was a criminal. Your child got a D in mathematics, right? Your child missed 8 days of school. They're gonna pull everything out to justify killing your child. So I'm just telling y'all get ready. So family, I love every last one of y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Y'all make sure y'all show some real support for my research assistant. Put her on here now. Make sure y'all say what's up to her. Show some support when you see her log on. Just say hi to her. Tell her thank you. I will always let you guys know who came up with the topic. This is her topic. I think she did an excellent job. I said I'm glad that we went over this, and I'm glad that I was able to tie in her information with the new law that has changed in New York State, where they're now allowing people to carry their guns outside of their homes. So I love every last one of y'all. Keep it very real. To all of my customers, you will be getting your orders this week. So if you have gone to Helping Couples Reconnect and you ordered your pheromone perfume and your pheromone candles and all the other good stuff, I can't say some of the stuff online, you will be getting your items in the mail. I love every last one of you guys for real. Have a great night.